Hello and welcome to this video. This is for people living with HIV. It's for HIV charities, public health practitioners, peer support networks, and other HIV medical teams. Now, when I was about to do this presentation, I spoke to a woman who was living with HIV and I said, what would you like to know about HIV? And her response was, Louise, how can yoga therapy help me to show up fully in my body and to help to edge away from stress, trauma, etc., and feel strong and turn to empowerment? She then want to find ways to feel confident when approaching different experiences and stand in my grace. And I hope that this presentation answers her question and any questions you have about the benefits of yoga therapy for people living with HIV. There are over 40.8 million people across the world living with HIV, and there is a global strategy to eliminate new cases of HIV by 2033. When someone is diagnosed with HIV, it can be a really traumatic event. Um, and in a study that was done in 2011, 40% of participants who took part in the study were met the criteria for HIV related post-traumatic stress, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that meant that the diagnosis, the HIV diagnosis itself, was experienced as a traumatic event. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Van der Kolk speaks about trauma victims cannot recover until they become familiar with and befriend the sensations in their bodies. Yoga therapy is is a model that's used to look and work with clients using a holistic, multi-dimensional lens, which means one size doesn't fit all. And then if that's the case, residents, clients are able to come to yoga therapy sessions with their full self, all parts of them, not just one part. And yoga therapists have various tools in their toolbox. It could be physical postures, breath control, concentration techniques, and creating space for the client to think about how they live in the world and how they see themselves and the union with themselves. And they may also offer lifestyle suggestions, but yoga therapy isn't a replacement for medical advice or medical care. It complements existing care. It's not like any general yoga class. Therapists do not encourage or support clients to push past pain. So, when someone is diagnosed with HIV, how does the body cope? Well, we know that people feel anxious, they feel depressed. We know that there can be diagnosed and undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. They feel really stressed. And what that does to the body is create inflammation. It also releases high levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, into the body. And that impacts the immune function. The immune function is under stress. And I like to look at this two ways. You've got HIV, the virus itself, that causes inflammation, cortisol, and impacts the immune system. And then you have the person that's received the diagnosis. And because of that diagnosis, they have elevated levels of cortisol, which impacts their immune system, and they have high levels of inflammation in the body. And that really stresses the body and it stresses the mind. So, there are a number of techniques that yoga therapists can use, various types of breathing exercises. We have the Ujjayi breath, which is a type of breath work that strengthens the diaphragm. It's a very slow breath, and when you breathe really slowly on the exhale, it stimulates your vagal nerve. Your vagal nerve runs from the end of your brainstem all the way down to your lungs and your chest. And when that's activated and stimulated, it's sending signals to tell the body that it's safe. This breathing techniques helps clients to feel really present in the body. They're focusing and they're concentrating, and that in turns allows for interoception, which means kind of monitoring different sensations in the body. Many people with HIV dissociate. They don't want to feel. They don't want to believe. They don't want to live with HIV. And this is a way to reconnect body awareness. And also, this breathing practice reduces rumination. So the overthinking, the what are people going to say about me? How do I deal with this? How do I disclose? How do I date? How do I tell my children? This constant thought process and battle, this breathing technique is really supportive for that. There's also something called alternate nostril breathing, and that helps to create balance. You breathe in and out through different sides of the nasal passage, which can help reduce heart rate and increase parasympathetic activation. So, parasympathetic is your central nervous system side of your rest and digest, and the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. And those living with HIV, not only at the beginning of the diagnosis, but throughout the diagnosis, the body's automatically move into that fight or flight system. So these breathing practices can really help to alleviate that. And we have something called Yoga Nidra, which is another tool in the toolbox, and it's really relaxing, calming, and grounding. It helps clients feel safe in their body. It's a really inclusive practice. So, this is not about being fit or being slim or being flexible. What it does do is it offers clients agency. So they feel in control, they feel that they are in the driving seat of their future. This is what this practice can do. It activates the parasympathetic drive, the rest and digest, and that in turn lowers cortisol. This practice offers a window to rewire the mind. And that has a positive effect on heart rate variability that reduces stress levels. So this impacts how the heart and lungs can work together because carbon dioxide is being regulated through this practice, and muscles are relaxed. So muscles can get quite tense during stressful when the body is under stress, and this practice can help to lessen that stress. And also, it has been proven to reduce insomnia, yoga nidra. It's a great practice for people who are highly anxious and stressed. So, the yoga therapists will have an intake form, and they are skilled to review that form and take into consideration any contraindications and also any other comorbidities, that somebody may have asthma or COPD. They could have an eating disorder, whatever, bipolar, and therapists are equipped to understand that and to adjust breathing practices accordingly. So, in a review of yoga for people living with HIV, researchers noticed that the pranayama techniques, meaning the breathing practices I just spoke about on the previous slide, were consistently associated with improvements in mental health, stress reduction, and the overall quality of life for people living with HIV. So, how can yoga therapy support bone health? Well, we know that cortisol affects the way that calcium is absorbed in the body. And we also know that people living with HIV are predisposed to osteopenia and osteoporosis, which is bone density loss. So, yoga can help with the client's balance, spatial awareness, what's around them. So, if they're going to fall or they're worried about falling, yoga can support that, helps to reduce stiffness. Really important, it helps with the posture. Yoga therapists are trained, as I said, at a really high level, so they understand about osteopenia, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, all those things. So they know how to work with a client on a case by case, individual basis. And especially with clients who may have chronic pain, is understanding how their mental health and chronic pain and maybe fear of moving the body, the yoga therapist will be able to hold space to get the body moving in a way that works for the client. So there are philosophies in relation to yoga therapy, and it's generally about being kind to oneself and reducing harm to oneself and others, and speaking with kindness. We know that HIV can send some real negative thoughts in your mind. I'm not good enough. No one's going to want me. What will someone say? No one wants to, touch me, or they're gonna, So these philosophies can really lend itself to navigating that world of stigma and shame. And also looking at contentment and also discipline. And the discipline could be about not pushing too far, understanding the window of tolerance and working within that when you're working with body. So, how can it be delivered? Yoga therapy can be delivered in person, it can be delivered online via Zoom live. And there was a study that was done in 2026 where participants took place for 8 online hatha yoga classes twice a week via Zoom live. And after the 8 week intervention, they had lower stress scores, which means that they were better at coping with the stressful situations that life throws at them. Sustainability. Yoga therapy is sustainable because dealing with stigma is really difficult, really stressful, really anxious. And yoga can be an anchor because people are going to be learning skills and how to work with anxiety. They'll be learning how to work with being disciplined. They're going to be learning to work about self-care. They'll be learning to work about learning to work around how to stay present in the present moment. And that is where the mindfulness practices come in. Often thinking about what are people going to say. This is the thing, this is the common theme with HIV. What is someone going to say? And mindfulness is so key in that. And it could be simple lifestyle recommendations, like maybe go for a walk, maybe put the phone down, those sorts of things. If And also that will have an impact on not just the client, but also the extended family. Because if that client has children, the children will be picking up on those stress levels. If the client has PTSD and they're depressed, children, work is going to be picking up, and they are affected with, with the impact of HIV. And also the client will leave these sessions with so much education on about posture and how to manage stressful situations. And this is off the mat, and this is after the sessions, and this is something that they can take for the rest of their lives. So this isn't just about HIV. This is about living well, and it's about living well in a way that is just a little bit less suffering. Thank you for listening.